Daniel Carter's wrists burned against the metal cuffs as the alien enforcers dragged him through the towering halls of the Zalathian High Tribunal. His boots scraped against the cold, obsidian floor, leaving a faint trail of dust behind. One of the few human traces in this foreign world. The guards, massive reptilian creatures clad in shimmering battle armor, hauled him forward with little effort. Their clawed hands dug into his arms, ensuring he had no chance of escape. The tribunal chamber was a vast, circular arena with thousands of spectators. The beings in the audience varied. Some were towering insectoids with glistening exoskeletons. Others gelatinous blobs shifting in color with every passing moment. A few, like the Zalathian enforcers, were humanoid in shape but covered in scales, their slit-pupil eyes glowing like embers in the dim light. At the center of the chamber stood the execution block, a raised metallic platform with a restraint system designed to hold any species. Behind it, the High Arbiter, a figure draped in ceremonial robes, watched with an impassive expression, his elongated head, covered in intricate silver markings, tilted slightly as Daniel was dragged forward. Daniel Carter of Earth. The Arbiter's voice rang through the chamber, reverberating against the high stone walls. You stand accused of crimes against the Zalathian Empire. You've been found guilty. The sentence is death. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Some aliens chittered in their native tongues. Others simply watched with glowing eyes. Daniel swallowed, his throat dry. He had known this moment was coming, yet facing it now, he felt the crushing weight of reality. He had been captured 3 days ago, ambushed in the lawless Outer Rim, while attempting to transport an advanced AI core. The Zalathians considered such technology a threat to their rule, fearing that artificial intelligence could disrupt their tightly controlled dominion. They had wasted no time in labeling him a criminal and dragging him here for a swift trial, one where he hadn't been allowed to speak in his own defense. Daniel clenched his jaw as the guards forced him onto his knees before the execution block. The restraint system whirred to life, locking his arms and legs in place with bands of energy. The enforcer standing beside him, a particularly large Zalathian with deep crimson scales, unsheathed a curved energy blade. The executioner. The crowd hushed as the Arbiter raised a hand. Final words, human? Daniel exhaled slowly. His mind raced. The energy blade hummed ominously beside him. He had only seconds before it would slice through his neck. He could beg, plead for his life, but the Zalathians had no mercy for criminals. Or he could speak the words he'd been holding on to, the ones that had the power to shatter everything. A slow smile crept onto his face. If he was going to die, he'd at least make them hesitate first. Daniel raised his head and spoke, his voice clear and unwavering. I know the truth about the Zalathian prophecy. A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. The executioner hesitated, his blade hovering inches from Daniel's neck. The Arbiter's expression darkened, his glowing eyes narrowing. The silence was deafening. Daniel had their attention. Now, he just had to survive long enough to use it. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of Daniel's words settled over the chamber like a thundercloud, thick with tension and the promise of chaos. The Zalathian prophecy. The mere mention of it sent a ripple of unease through the assembled crowd. The gelatinous beings shifted into darker hues. The insectoids clicked their mandibles nervously, and even the cold, calculating Zalathian enforcers, exchanged glances. The executioner's grip on the energy blade faltered. His massive frame tense, his crimson scales darkening. He turned his head slightly toward the Arbiter, waiting for instruction. The High Arbiter's expression, which had been unreadable before, was now carved from stone. His glowing golden eyes locked onto Daniel, searching, calculating. You speak of matters beyond your understanding, human, the Arbiter finally said, his voice measured. But there was an edge to it, an edge of fear. Daniel smiled despite the restraints digging into his arms. If that were true, I wouldn't be standing here, would I? The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, a chorus of confusion and curiosity. Daniel could feel the shift in the room. The certainty of his execution was now clouded by something more powerful, doubt. The Arbiter slowly descended the high steps of his platform, his robes trailing behind him. His tall, slender frame moved with deliberate precision as he approached the execution block. The enforcer stiffened at his presence but did not intervene. "Tell me," the Arbiter said, his voice lower now, dangerously soft. "What does a mere human know of the prophecy?" Daniel took a slow breath, knowing he was playing a dangerous game. If he revealed too little, they would see through his bluff and kill him. If he revealed too much, he might never leave this place alive. So he chose his words carefully. "I know the prophecy isn't what you claim it to be," he said. "I know it doesn't predict Zalathian rule over the galaxy. In fact, it warns of your downfall." Gasps echoed across the chamber. The Zalathians prided themselves on their supposed divine right to rule, a right supposedly foretold in their sacred texts. To hear otherwise, especially from an outsider, was blasphemy. The executioner growled lowly, his blade sparking as he gripped it tighter. But the Arbiter raised a hand to stop him. "Explain yourself," the Arbiter commanded. Daniel met his gaze and continued. "Your people have spent centuries telling the galaxy that your rule was prophesied, that the stars themselves decreed your empire would last forever. But that's a lie, isn't it?" The Arbiter remained silent, his glowing eyes locked onto Daniel's. "The real prophecy," Daniel pressed on, "the one your scholars erased from history, tells a different story. It speaks of an outsider, a being from beyond the known star systems, who will arrive at the height of your power and bring about your empire's collapse." A heavy silence followed his words. For the first time, Daniel saw something flicker in the Arbiter's expression. Doubt. Fear. "How do you know this?" the Arbiter finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Daniel tilted his head, allowing a smirk to cross his face. "Because I found the original text, the one your people tried to bury." The murmurs in the crowd grew into a chaotic uproar. Some of the alien dignitaries leaned forward in their seats, their expressions unreadable. The Zalathian enforcers shifted uneasily, their hands hovering over their weapons. The Arbiter's face darkened. "You are lying." "Am I?" Daniel challenged. "Then execute me, kill me, and let your people continue believing the lie. But if I'm telling the truth, then my death will only hasten what's coming." The Arbiter hesitated. For the first time since the trial began, he did not seem certain. Daniel felt the power shift. The Zalathians were a ruthless empire, but their control was built on the foundation of the prophecy. If that foundation cracked, their rule would falter. The executioner, still gripping his energy blade, growled, "He is stalling. Let me finish this." But the Arbiter held up his hand once more. "No." His gaze bore into Daniel, unblinking. "If you possess knowledge of the true prophecy, then you will not die today." A murmur of shock swept through the chamber. Even the enforcers looked at the Arbiter in confusion. Daniel's heart pounded. He wasn't free yet, but he had just bought himself time. The Arbiter turned to the guards. "Take him to the inner chamber. We will extract the truth from him there." The enforcers hesitated, then stepped forward, releasing the restraints and hauling Daniel to his feet. As they dragged him away from the execution block, Daniel allowed himself a small, triumphant smile. He had survived the blade. Daniel's wrists burned as the enforcers yanked him through the labyrinthine corridors of the tribunal fortress. The walls were made of the same dark obsidian as the execution chamber, their polished surfaces reflecting the dim, pulsating lights embedded in the ceiling. The air was thick with the scent of metal and something more alien, an almost electric tang that made his skin prickle. He had won a battle, but the war was far from over. Surviving the execution block had been a calculated risk, but now he was in uncharted territory. The Zalathian Arbiter had called for his transfer to the inner chamber, a place whose purpose Daniel could only guess at. If the Zalathians wanted to extract the truth from him, it meant one of two things. Either they intended to interrogate him through traditional means, or they had more advanced, far less pleasant methods. He flexed his fingers against the restraints, testing their strength. The energy bands around his wrists were tight, humming with power. No easy way out. The guards dragging him were silent, their expressions unreadable beneath their battle helmets. The only sound was the rhythmic clicking of their clawed feet against the polished floor. Finally, they reached an enormous set of doors, thick, metallic, and covered in intricate glowing runes. The lead guard pressed a palm to a control panel, and the doors groaned open with a deep, resonating hum. Inside, the room was dimly lit, with a single chair positioned at the center of a circular platform. Restraints extended from an armrest, and above it, mechanical appendages bristling with alien instruments hung like the legs of a metallic spider. Interrogation. Of course. Daniel was shoved forward. He stumbled but caught himself before falling. The guards forced him into the chair, and before he could resist, the restraints snapped shut around his wrists and ankles. A soft, mechanical whir signaled the activation of the interrogation machinery above him. The Arbiter entered a moment later, his robes gliding across the floor. His golden eyes locked onto Daniel with a mix of scrutiny and something deeper, uncertainty. He was still trying to decide whether Daniel was lying. "You have placed yourself in a dangerous position, human," the Arbiter said, his voice calm but heavy with meaning. "You claim knowledge that does not belong to your kind, knowledge that could unravel centuries of order." Daniel leaned back, feigning relaxation despite the restraints digging into his skin. "I didn't claim anything. I just said I know." The Arbiter's gaze sharpened. "Then you will prove it." With a flick of his fingers, the machinery above hummed to life. One of the metallic appendages extended toward Daniel's head, its tip glowing with a faint blue energy. A memory extractor. Daniel gritted his teeth. He had heard rumors about these devices. Technology capable of probing into a subject's mind, pulling out raw memories like files from a database. The process was reportedly painful, though no one had lived to give a detailed account. "Let's not do this," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the tension in his chest. "If you try to rip the knowledge from my mind, you risk destroying the information in the process. Prophecies aren't just data. They're interpretation, context, meaning. If you want to understand the truth, you need me conscious and talking, not fried." The Arbiter studied him, considering his words. The machine hovered inches from Daniel's temple, crackling with energy. Then, after a long pause, the Arbiter raised a hand. The machine powered down. The guard stiffened but did not protest. The Arbiter stepped closer. "Then speak. Tell me where you found the supposed true prophecy." Daniel exhaled, choosing his words carefully. "You already know where. The ruins of Zelvari." The Arbiter's reaction was immediate. His posture stiffened, his fingers twitching slightly, a small but telling sign of unease. "You lie," he said, but there was doubt in his voice now. Daniel smiled. "Do I? Then tell me, why did your people bury those ruins? Why is every record of Zelvari restricted? Why is access punishable by death?" The room was silent. Even the guards exchanged uncertain glances. Zelvari was a name known only in whispers, a lost city said to predate the Zelathian Empire itself. Legends claim it held forbidden knowledge, remnants of a civilization long erased from history. Daniel had risked everything to find it. "You know I'm telling the truth," he continued. "Your scholars found the real prophecy there centuries ago. But instead of embracing it, your leaders covered it up. They erased its existence from your records and replaced it with a false prophecy, one that justified your rule over the galaxy." The Arbiter's jaw clenched. Daniel pressed on. "But they couldn't destroy the truth completely. They tried, but fragments remained, hidden in ancient inscriptions, scattered in forgotten archives. I pieced them together. And now, so can you." The Arbiter turned away, pacing slowly. His mind was a battlefield, torn between duty and doubt. He had been raised to believe in the prophecy that declared Zelathian supremacy, but if what Daniel said was true, it would mean everything he knew was a lie. Finally, he stopped and turned back to Daniel. His golden eyes burned with intensity. "If you are deceiving me," he said, his voice dangerously low, "I will ensure your death is far slower than what awaited you at the execution block." Daniel smirked. "Then you'd better start preparing for a very inconvenient truth." The Arbiter studied him for a long moment. Then, with a gesture, he signaled to the guards. "Take him to the Vault of Records," he ordered. "If the human speaks truth, we will find the evidence there." The guards hesitated but obeyed, releasing Daniel from the chair and yanking him to his feet. As they led him away, Daniel felt a surge of triumph. He had done it. He had forced them to listen. Now, He just had to make sure he survived long enough to show them the proof. Daniel's wrists were still sore from the restraints as the enforcers dragged him through another set of corridors, deeper into the heart of the Zalathian fortress. The air grew colder, the walls shifting from polished obsidian to something older, rough-hewn stone, carved with faded symbols that pulsed faintly under the dim lighting. They were entering the Vault of Records, a place whispered about even in the criminal underworld of the Outer Rim. It was said to be the Zalathians' most protected archive, housing texts and artifacts too dangerous to be made public. If the true prophecy still existed, this was the only place it could be. The Arbiter walked ahead of them, his steps measured, his mind clearly racing with the weight of the situation. Daniel had shaken something in him. Something deeply ingrained, something he had spent his entire life believing. And now, for the first time, doubt had crept in. They reached a set of towering doors made of an unfamiliar alloy, covered in ancient Zalathian script. The Arbiter placed his hand on a circular indentation in the metal, and the doors groaned open, revealing a vast chamber beyond. Rows upon rows of ancient texts and crystalline data tablets lined the towering shelves. A soft hum filled the space, as if the very air was charged with knowledge long buried. In the center of the room stood a massive stone pedestal, its surface inlaid with golden symbols that pulsed with a slow, rhythmic glow. Daniel exhaled. If the truth was anywhere, it was here. The Arbiter strode forward, scanning the inscriptions on the pedestal. His fingers traced over the markings, his expression unreadable. "The records of Zelvari were sealed generations ago," he murmured. "Even I have never seen them." Daniel stepped closer, ignoring the enforcer's wary stares. "Then it's time you did." The Arbiter's fingers pressed against a symbol, and a low hum resonated through the room. The pedestal's surface shifted, golden light forming into a holographic projection above it. A series of ancient glyphs appeared, rearranging themselves into a readable translation. "The cycle is inevitable. The empire shall rise, but it shall not last. From beyond the void, an outsider shall come, not as a conqueror, nor as a savior, but as a herald. His words shall shake the foundation of the false throne, and the empire shall fall." A heavy silence followed. The Arbiter's hands clenched at his sides. The enforcers exchanged uneasy glances. Daniel let the words sink in. He had spent years searching for this truth, risking everything to uncover what the Zalathians had buried. And now, standing in the very heart of their empire, he had forced them to confront it. The Arbiter exhaled slowly, his golden eyes flickering with something unreadable. "This cannot be." "It is," Daniel said. "You just never wanted to see it." One of the enforcers stepped forward, his voice tight with controlled fury. "This changes nothing. The empire is strong. One prophecy will not undo us." Daniel turned to him, raising an eyebrow. "Are you sure? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like your entire belief system was built on a lie." The enforcer growled, reaching for his weapon, but the Arbiter raised a hand to stop him. His gaze remained locked on the glowing text. Slowly, something in his posture shifted. Acceptance, understanding, and a hint of fear. "The empire was never meant to last," he murmured. "We were fools to believe otherwise." A new tension filled the air. The enforcers looked to their leader, waiting for a command. Some of them seemed unwilling to accept what they had just seen. Others seemed uncertain, shaken. This was the moment, the fragile tipping point where everything could either descend into chaos or change forever. Daniel took a step closer, his voice steady. "You can try to hide this again. Kill me. Bury the truth, just like your ancestors did. But you saw what happened. The prophecy didn't die. It resurfaced, and it will always resurface." The Arbiter closed his eyes, exhaling sharply. When he opened them again, they burned with something different. Resolve. "No more lies," he said. The enforcer stiffened. "Arbiter." "No more lies." The Arbiter's voice echoed through the chamber, final and absolute. "For too long, we have ruled under a false prophecy. The galaxy deserves the truth. We must be the ones to give it to them." Chaos erupted. Some of the enforcers shouted in protest, their hands on their weapons. Others hesitated, torn between loyalty and the undeniable truth before them. Daniel braced himself, ready for violence, ready for the Arbiter to be overthrown, for the Empire to reject its own truth. But then, something incredible happened. One by one, the enforcers lowered their weapons. The room fell into silence once more. The Arbiter turned to Daniel, his gaze unreadable. "You have done what no other outsider has done. You have changed the course of our empire." Daniel exhaled, finally allowing himself to believe it. So he said, "I'm guessing that means I'm free to go?" The Arbiter gave a small, tired smile. "Yes, and more than that, you will be remembered." Daniel chuckled. "I think I prefer a fast ship and a head start." The Arbiter nodded. "That can be arranged." And just like that, the fate of an empire shifted. Daniel had spoken, and the truth had set him free.